Hello everyone and welcome to the 1909 match between Jose Raul Capablanca and Frank James Marshall. We already covered a few games. For those of you who are just tuning in to this series or perhaps to this channel, we are doing some of the nicer and more important games in the life of Jose Raul Capablanca, the Cuban legend. We already covered a couple of his games against the Cuban champion Juan Corzo when he was 13 years old. Now we are here in this excellent match against we could say the strongest player in the United States after the death of the official champion Harry Nelson Pillsbury in 1906. And this is game 8. Capablanca is 3 points in the lead, and in game 7 Capablanca did lose one game to Marshall, but I'm saving that game for the end of this match. So we're gonna skip that one, but we are gonna return to it, as it would be a shame not to show a nice game by Frank Marshall as well, as he's facing a legend here. So without further ado, Capablanca has the white pieces. Again, he opens with e4. And again, we're going to have a very nice game where Capablanca just shows that even though he has no knowledge of opening theory, how easily, but just by using the principles, he punishes Marshall's play in the opening. So okay, e4, e5, we have knight to f3, sorry about that. Knight to c6 and bishop to b5. The Ruy Lopez is on the board, and d6. Again, we have the old Steinitz defense. We have castles by Capablanca, a6, asking whether the bishop will retreat or capture on c6. Capablanca decides to capture. Bishop captures, pawn captures, and now d4. We have pawn captures, knight captures, attacking the c6 pawn, and the Marshall defends it. We have bishop to d7 and rook to e1. So you can see that Capablanca already castled, so his king is very safe. The rook is already active on e1. The knight is very strong in the center of the board. On d4, the queen can come into the play via h5, f3, e2. The knight can come into the game. So the development of Capablanca's pieces feels very natural. Where Marshall, he does have a semi-open file for his rook. He does have a pretty strong central control, but he still has a long way to go to finish development. So how do you finish development here? This is the exact same moment where you want to go bishop e7, knight f6, and then just castle. But Marshall goes c5 first. First he kicks the knight away from this very nice active square, knight to f3, and now bishop to e7. Now Marshall wants to complete the development as well. Knight to c3, just a natural developing move, and here you want to develop further, but the problem with knight to f6 now is that now e5 is an option, as you've kicked away this knight from d4 to f3. The knight supports e5, and after d captures, knight captures. Now you can castle, but you can see that things really are working in white's favor. Bishop to g5, you already threatened to capture on f6, and then there will be a double attack against the bishop on d7. And after bishop to e6, now you can go knight c6, attack the queen and the bishop. After the queen moves, knight captures, queen captures, and now knight to e4. Already you're attacking the pinned piece, and you can feel that white's position is just getting better and better. Queen d7, you offer a queen trade, but knight captures on f6. With check, g captures, bishop captures, and after black exchanges queens, as he doesn't really have anything better, you can see that the white is already up material, he's up a pawn, and even though they are bishops of opposite colors, there are two rooks on the board, and in Capablanca's hands this would be winning. And you can't even capture a pawn because there are even threats of something like rook d3, rook g3 checkmate. So not that easy to complete development now, even though it's very, very early in the game. So Marshall tries c6, takes control of the d5 square. He wants to play bishop to e6 and then push d5. Bishop to f4, by playing c6, now the d6 pawn becomes weak. So the queen and bishop are now attacking it. Bishop to e6, the queen now joins in the defense of the d6 pawn, and now queen d3. Capablanca continues development. Knight to f6, black now prepares to castle, but first rook 8 to d1 with a triple attack against the d6 pawn. And here there's no way to further defend your pawn, so Marshall advances it. We have d5, and now not capturing, but first bishop to g5. And here you could take this moment to castle, but if you castle now, then you get e5, and what are you going to do with this knight? You can't move it because of queen captures on h7 checkmate. And if you play something like knight e4, then simply knight c captures on e4, d captures, queen captures. Again, you're threatening checkmate, and you're also threatening to capture the queen. It will be impossible to prevent both threats. You will have to capture with the bishop on g5, give up the queen for a knight and the rook, and white will be winning here. So after this knight to g5 move, castling is premature here. But what could you do? If you capture on e4, still doesn't work. Queen g3, you open up a discovery against the black queen. After the queen moves, let's say queen c8, then comes bishop to d6. Again, you're not allowing black to castle because of bishop captures on e7. The bishop on e7 is unguarded. And after bishop captures, queen captures. Now the black king is never castling, and with this rook being stuck on h8, it's as if white is up a full rook. If you try something like rook to a7 to keep an eye on the 7th rank, then comes knight g captures on e4. There's really no good way to prevent this. Knight captures, and now there are a lot of threats here. You can see that both rooks are excellently placed on open files. And here, after something like rook to d7, queen captures on c5, you're still keeping an eye on this diagonal. Black is never castling here. Let's say queen c7, now comes knight d6 check, and here you're just winning. You have to give up the exchange because, well, if you go king f8, then you win the queen straight up, as there's a very nice discovery, the king is in check. And if you don't, if you go something like king here, then again, you get rook captures on e6, f captures on e6, and now queen g5 check. And again, you don't really have an option, you have to go rook e7, and now knight b5 check. Again, you force the king to go to d8, you win the queen. So not a lot of ways to prevent this after Capablanca plays knight to g5. So black has already a lot of difficulties. Marshall tries to close the position. d4 is played here, and here we have knight captures on e6 first. Attacking the queen, you are forcing black to capture on e6, pawn captures, and now comes knight to a4. And this would have been perhaps a nice opportunity for black to castle, but still it's not easy. If you castle queen c4 with a double attack against the c5 pawn, also the e6 pawn is under attack, it would be a very uncomfortable position for Marshall. So after knight a4, we have queen to a5. Marshall first attacks the rook here, brings another defender to the c5 pawn. We have b3, Capablanca defends it, and now comes rook to d8. And here we have knight to b2. Now Capablanca decides to transfer this knight on c4. It's an excellent square for the knight. Also, it will save time as it will come with an attack against the black queen. And here, again, if you try castling, you're getting queen to h3 here with a very nice attack against the e6 pawn. You don't want to allow this. So first, Marshall tried knight to h5. Perhaps if this bishop comes to g3, then queen to h3 will not be a possibility. But Capablanca plays bishop to e5 instead. And it's a very important move, already attacking the king side, pressuring the king side. It controls the d6 square, which will be very important in the future, both d6 and f6, but allows black to castle. But it doesn't matter. Now that black finally castled on 19th move, and he could have already started castling instead of that c5 kicking out the knight by already playing bishop to e7. But okay, he completed development on move 19. But now Capablanca has knight c4. The queen is under attack. We have queen to b4, and now comes queen to h3. With an attack against this stranded knight on h5 and also against the e6 pawn. So you cannot prevent both threats. g6 is played defending the knight, and now queen captures on e6 with check. You cannot move the king as the bishop controls this diagonal. You have to block, and also is the only move. But it's just as well as your bishop on e7 is under attack. And here there are a couple of ways Capablanca can continue this, but he plays the most enjoyable move, that is g4. What do you do with the dark knight here? You can't move it. F4 and f6 are off limits. The rook cannot help defending as the rook is pinned here. So you could play knight g7, but then bishop captures. You have to capture with the king, and knight e5. You're either losing the rook here, or if you move the rook, then you lose the bishop. So white is completely winning here. After this g4 move, Marshall tried bishop to h4. He saw that it's impossible to defend anymore. Now we have to start an attack. So there's the threat against the f2 pawn. Capablanca says no problem. G captures on h5, and now bishop captures on f2 with check. King to h1, and now what do? If you play bishop captures on e1, it doesn't work. H captures on g6, h captures, queen captures, and now you're getting checkmated. If you block with the rook, it's mate in 1, you have to try and run away. But then knight d6, you're threatening checkmate, and after a few checks, rook f1 check, king g2, rook f2 check, king g1, there are no more useful checks, and there is no good defense against queen g7 that will be checkmate. You can try to run away, but then you get knight f5 check, king d7, queen f7 check, king moves, and queen c7 will be checkmate, but every other line ends in checkmate, so just as well. So after king to h1, black cannot capture. Marshall plays queen to c3. Marshall finds a very nice counter-attacking idea. Queen f3 will be checkmate, as the bishop is covering g1. But here, Capablanca has a fantastic resource. I want you to pause the video here and try to find the move Capablanca played. It's really just a very clever move, so try to find the clever move. I'll give you a couple of seconds as usual. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations. It's really, really a clever move. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, rook to e3. Excellent move, as you can see that the pawn cannot capture. If pawn captures, it's mate in 1. Rook captures, the bishop still controls this diagonal, the rook is pinned. If you don't capture with the pawn, if you capture with the bishop, then the bishop is blocking the queen's approach to the f3 square. And now you simply continue your attack. H captures on g6. H captures, queen captures with check. And now it's a similar idea like before. Either rook blocks and then queen captures is mate in 1. Or you will run away with the king f8, but now knight d6 attacks the rook. There's no rook f1 check anymore because the rook controls f1. So you have to prevent it, and then after knight captures, rook captures, bishop d6 check. It will be over very quickly. King e8, queen e6 check, king d8. Now you can simply capture on f7. There's no defense. It will be a checkmate very soon. As you cannot capture with the pawn or with the bishop, you cannot capture the rook. Marshall plays queen captures on c2. Again, he prevents white from continuing the attack. H captures here will be met with queen captures rook on d1. So first, we have rook e to d3, getting the rook out of harm's way and also protecting the rooks here. And now you're also covering the f3 square, so any future queen e2, perhaps to f3 ideas will not be possible, as the rook now is covering the f3 square. Queen to e2, Marshall finds yet another attacking idea. He wants to play bishop to e1 and finish off with queen to f1 checkmate. So how does Capablanca go about this? Knight to d6, attacking the pinned piece. Of course, the thread is mate in 1, queen captures on f7. So there's not much option here. Rook captures on d6 was played, you have to play this, bishop captures, and now bishop to e1. Here Marshall threatens not that, of course, but queen to f1 checkmate. And how do you prevent this? Well, it's there's really only one line, queen to e8 check. You have to block or move, or you don't want to block, you'll get queen captures on f8, king g7, and here, I'm sure you all see it, I will give you a second to see it, the move Capablanca played, as it's a very nice move. Capablanca played h6, and it was in this position on move 31 that Frank James Marshall resigned the game. Why did he resign? If you decide to capture the pawn, then of course you lose the rook, and there's no counterplay. The queen from f7 is controlling f1, there is no checkmate, and after you play a check here, queen captures on e4, you can block with the rook, and now any move you make will of course end the game very quickly. Bishop f8 check, king h5, you can go queen captures on h7 check, and after you move you can simply just trade everything and you'll just be much better. And of course after h6, if you don't capture, if you decide to defend the rook here, then of course again you will see it, queen e5, this will be checkmate, as the rook on f7 and pawn on g6 create a wall, a barrier against the black king, so the black king cannot escape anywhere. And I also will use this as a thumbnail, as it's very nice. That's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. Some of you mentioned in the comments that I did mention there was some controversy to this match, but then I didn't say anything about it. I'm saving that for the last game we'll be showing in this match, and then we're gonna complete the entire story about this match before we head off to the Capablanca's first international tournament in San Sebastian of 1911. I would like to thank Alexander Chernobylsky, Nebojša Mrmak, Andy Talbot, Hans Loverik, and Stefan McNellis for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with some more interesting videos, but most likely continuing the Capablanca saga and this match with Frank James Marshall. Thank you all, and I'll see you soon.